the Senate passed something called a justice reform bill. And I don't know a lot about it, except they're trying to get criminals to be able to vote again, especially the black ones, because so many of them are in jail. I have with me Stacey Hervey. And Stacey is a high school and university teacher and former parole officer. She has an appointee. She's an appointee on the Denver Crime Prevention and Control Commission. She specializes in school safety, hate crime, and juvenile delinquency. Stacey, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for coming. Merry Christmas to you.
You too.
Do you celebrate Christmas?
Oh, yes.
All right. Merry Christmas. So what are your thoughts on the bipartisan criminal justice reform bill that passed the Senate?
In regards to felons being allowed to vote?
Yes.
Personally, I think once you have served your sentence, you should be rehabilitated back into society and allowed to vote.
And why do you think that? Because if you do, there's no punishment for crime.
I think once you have served your sentence, you should be allowed. You shouldn't have to continue to face the penalties of that. And that's after you're off probation and parole, of course, too. But, you've served your sentence afforded to you by the court, so you should be allowed to vote again.
Is that because most of the crimes are committed by blacks and Hispanics?
They definitely are overrepresented in our criminal justice system. Even if you look at it per capita, yes, that is true.
And when you say overrepresented, meaning that they definitely are committing most of the crimes, the blacks and Mexicans?
Per capita, correct.
Oh, okay.
And some of that is based on some of the poverty situations they're raised in and that sort of thing. But
poverty mean that they have no character, that's why they're committing the crimes?
I wouldn't say that. No, there's some different things that happen in some of our urban communities.
Would men and women of character commit crimes if they were, quote unquote, living in poverty?
No, because a majority of people living in poverty never commit crimes.
Yeah. So most of you people who are committing crimes, they lack character, right?
I would not saying they lack character, no.
What would you say?
I'm saying it can be, if you look at really crime, there's a variety of theories as to why people commit crime. There's not one reason, so you really have to look at the individual and also the crime. I mean, drug crimes are going to be different than crimes of passion or crimes of opportunity. I
grew up on a plantation down in Alabama under the Jim Crow laws. I lived in a tin-roof house with two rooms and a kitchen. The bathrooms were outside, and blacks were not committing. And I was, according to what they call poor now, I was very poor. I didn't know it at the time, but I was poor, and yet you didn't see the crime. We had character, so you didn't see the crime being committed by blacks and Hispanics as you see now. So I believe it's due to the lack of values, the lack of moral character. Do you agree?
That's what many people agree, and I would say there's definitely a part of that. You have working families now where both families have to work. Kids are spending longer in daycare and or schools. And so definitely it starts at home, but there's other factors as well that can influence someone to commit crime. We have a huge problem with drugs in this country.
But men and women of character don't take drugs, right? It's only the immorals who take drugs, right?
And not always. Not always. If you've ever, known someone who has chronic pain, there can be other reasons that people turn to drug use.
Okay. Do you agree the number one prevention of crime and radicalization is strong family and especially fathers? If they have strong families and especially fathers in the home, that will prevent a lot of crimes from happening, right, in our country?
I think it starts at the home, but I grew up in a single family household, and obviously I went a different route than others might. you always want a two-family household.
Yeah.
But
A
there's
husband
some
and a wife.
instances where that's not possible, where someone might have lost a father, either, like you might believe, due to jail, or they might be in the military, and so then it's going to be up to a single person. It definitely starts at home with good character
Yeah,
values.
I have noticed, and I've read studies where most of the crimes are committed by men and women, boys and girls who are coming from single mother homes. You don't see it a lot where there are fathers in the home because men tend to be more stronger and wiser than women. And so women tend to set children up to commit crimes because they become very angry.
I would disagree with that, just coming from a strong mother household. And I'm a single mother myself and would like to think that I instill good values in my own children and have, they're both teenagers. They're both going to college. They're both straight A students. And so sometimes you don't have that. Obviously, it's an ideal situation because I think fathers and mothers bring different things to parenting. But sometimes you need extended families as well, and that might be grandfathers, aunts, and uncles.
Do you agree that most of the people who are committing crimes are those who have gone or are going to college, who are educated and in some cases have a lot of money? They tend to be more of the alcohol and drug users and crime folks rather than the normal people. Have you noticed that?
The one thing we really can't explain is sometimes the white collar crime.
Yeah.
Like I said, each crime is different. Drugs and alcohol, especially in college, can lead kids to do things they normally wouldn't do.
What is the number one crime prevention that you have noticed or found?
I would say having kids succeed in school.
Oh, really?
I think if you can get kids motivated and to succeed in school early, it can prevent crime later on. Many of the people in prison have very low, they're not strong readers. And so as a teacher, I guess I would say we really need to get kids in the elementary schools reading and writing.
You would say education over morality? Because you can get all the education, have all the money, but if you don't have values, if you don't have morals, you still are likely to break or commit crimes. Am I right?
I would say it's a combination of both. You always have people who don't have strong family lives who don't commit crimes. But I also, think you can come from a perfect family or what appears to be a perfect family and still commit crimes.
Yeah. Are you a Christian?
I have Christian values, but I respect all religions.
So are you a Christian?
I was raised Christian, yes.
And you believe in God, right?
Correct.
So would you agree with me that men and women, boys and girls who truly are Christians don't commit crimes, right, because of those values?
No. I've seen many people who subscribe to Christian religions who commit crimes.
But are they fake Christians, not the real deal?
They would think they're the real deal.
What would you think?
You have many people who believe in Christian values just as any religion and still commit crimes.
Amazing. You worked with a black young man who spoke against Ferguson protesters jumping to conclusions. How do you make students dispassionate and identify only with what's right? I've noticed that most students today are passionate students and they don't identify with what is right. How do you change that, make them dispassionate?
My goal as a teacher is to teach kids how to think, not what to think. And so I present both sides of an issue, and I think all my students would say that, and then let them come to conclusions and try to do the research they need that fits into their values.
Do you agree that Black Lives Matter is a far-left, liberal, radical organization that was founded by black lesbians and black homosexuals and white radical social justice warriors? Is an evil organization that's worse than the KKK?
I do not believe that, no.
Why not? Even though they were chanting, when do we want dead cops, when do we want it now?
Dead cops! Now!
pigs in the blanket, fry them like bacon, and yet they were invited to the White House by Barack Obama, the worst president we ever have. Why don't you agree? And then cops were killed after they chanted those things. Why don't you agree that they are radical and evil?
I believe they have a radical element, just as the KKK does or other extremist groups in this country. Everyone has a right to believe and espouse in their First Amendment rights. Do I agree with everything they say? No. And do I agree that they can radicalize mainstream people? Yes, just like any group does. That's an extremist.
You were quoted in a recent Washington Post article about right-wing violence being on the rise. I want to know, is it in part because the establishment allows the radical left to get away with it? Because the people on the left are more radical than whites or people on the right, and the left tend to get away with it, and whites on the right tend to be falsely accused. Do you agree?
No, I think each side has extremist groups. The left has radicalization, the right has radicalization.
Like Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and other groups on the left, they're very radical, but you can't...
You also have the Earth Liberation Front, the Animal Liberation Front. Those are very radical groups too, which we've dealt with in Colorado with some of the ski resorts.
Hold on for me. Let me just take a really short break. I got one more question. So, Stacey, do you agree with me that one of the reasons that there's a rise in right-wing violence is because there's so much violence on the left, and they're allowed to get away with it? And when white people do fight back, because most of the time when they talk about right-wing, they talk about white people. When white people do fight back, they are accused rather than dealing with the folks on the left. And they're so out of control on the left. Do you agree?
I would disagree based on the motivations of hate crimes in recent statistics.
All of the statistics shows that there's more hate and violence toward white people from black people than there are white people attacking black people. And because white people are not allowed to deal with it, and they don't report the black on white violence, it seems there are more white people attacking black people. And then we saw in Charlottesville where Antifa attacked the people on the right who had a right to be there. And instead of the liberal media accusing Antifa, they accused the people on the right. Is that fair to do that way?
Most hate crimes are still committed against our LGBTQ community. There are instances, of course, where you have right-wing and left-wing. But I think statistics still show, according to FBI reports, that 62 to 65% of hate crimes are still committed by white people. That does not mean there's no other hate crimes in this world. Like I said, you have left wing, you have right wing, but I think the motivations are different. You have thrill seeking. Majority of hate crimes are by teenagers not knowing the extent of what they're doing. Your mission oriented hate crimes really are a small percentage, and that's like what you're talking about there or what happened in Charlottesville.
I disagree that LGBTQ people are being attacked. Those people are the most violent people on this side of heaven, and because they're protected group, they're allowed to get away with it. But the LGBT people are very, very nasty and violent, just as the people on the left are very nasty and violent. But in today's society, is white people on the right are always accused, especially if they fight back. And we see that happen in South Africa right now, where the black government has taken over and they are taking land without compensation from the whites, and they are killing whites and they're brutalizing whites. But because it's happening to white people, it's not being reported. And I see the same thing coming down here that's happening here in this country. Do you agree that the left needs to be detained or something needs to be, even though you named a few groups on the right that may be violent, but there are more on the left than there are on the right. Am I right about that?
I disagree.
Why do you disagree?
Based on statistics. You have a history in this country of right-wing extremist groups, from Timothy McVeigh, who is a part of the Christian identity movement, up until now. I'm not saying the left has extremist groups too.
And they have more on the left than they do on the right. You have Black Lives Matter, you have Antifa, you have the Democratic Party, you have the Never Trumpers, you have the race hustlers and black people. It's just a real mess on the left. Why do they ignore what's happening on the left? And you have the mainstream liberal media. Why do they ignore the violence on the left and pretend that it's coming from the people on the right? When
I'm
the
not
people
sure
on
who
the
you
right,
mean when you say they. If you mean police, society.
when I say why do they allow them to get away with it?
Who do you mean when you say they?
The police allow the left to get away with it. The mainstream media allow the left to get away with it. Many politicians allow them to get away with it. Why is that?
I would disagree. I don't think the police have some conspiracy to let the left get away with anything.
I don't think they have conspiracy. I think they are afraid to report and deal with the left because the left is so radical.
Like I said, I don't think the police are allowing the left to get away with anything.
But you do agree that the police are under order by the left politicians to allow the left to get away with violence, because we saw that in Charlottesville when Antifa attacked the alt-right. They allowed Antifa to do that. We saw it in Ferguson. We saw it in Baltimore. The police officers are ordered by the politicians not to do anything, but to stand down and let the left go wild and then blame the right for it.
I would respectfully disagree. I don't think politicians have that much control. Do you have some local influence that might influence departments? Surely, but I don't think the police are just standing down.
One last final question. I appreciate it. It's the mayor and the city councils who are doing this, but because whites have been falsely called racist and their parents failed them, many are becoming angry and radical. How do we deal with that kind of injustice toward white people?
How do we prevent kids from becoming angry?
Yeah, how do we prevent the whites from becoming angry at the false injustice that's been put upon them?
Well, I would say you have radical people on both sides. And so really the key to doing that is education and exposing everyone to different lifestyles.
Amazing. What's your website?
It's hate that really drives.
It is
all kinds of extremism.
Yeah. And people of color and folks on the left seem to be filled with hatred, but they try to use it to justify it.
There are lots of people who are filled with hatred from every different religion in each side of the political spectrum.
But especially on the left, right? They are hatred, they are angry, and they are hateful.
I would disagree. I would say there's hateful people on each side.
But majority on the left, though, right? You're right. It does exist on both sides. But you got to agree that most of the anger and hatred are coming from the left.
I guess I come from a place where I know people on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, they're very good people, and there's still extremists on both sides. So.
Amazing.
But thank you. I have to get to class. My high schoolers await me, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Do you want to give out your website?
Sure. It's lawjusticeforensics.com.
And your Twitter is at Hobby S.
Yes.
At Hobby S.
Yes, sir.
Hervey S. Thank you so much, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye now.